Wealth Management Group, hosted by Craig Bolanos. Heard Sunday mornings at 10.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan, and in for Amy this morning, Kristen McCurry from the Chicago Tribune editorial board. And Kristen, have you seen Unplanned yet?
I have not, no. I've heard you talk about it, and it sounds very compelling, but I have not seen it.
This is the movie based on Abby Johnson's book, former Planned Parenthood clinic director who became leading pro-life activist. We've had Abby on to talk about it. If you've seen Gosnell, you want to see Unplanned. And the fight for life is everywhere. It's not just some of these high-profile fights that you've seen in the state assemblies in Virginia and New York, now ongoing in Illinois, on college campuses, even, of course, even at Catholic universities. Students for Life got a permit to arrange their Cemetery of the Innocents display, crosses representing number of babies aborted, at Dominican University. You know, right here.
Mm-hmm.
And submitted a permit, got it approved. But then the chief diversity officer on campus got involved, of course, and ordered the removal of the displays, saying the crosses could, quote, create harm, unquote. I think the crosses are a message.
Are they using the crosses to, like, beat other kids?
No.
Or no, okay.
Yes, as symbolism, right. You know, Students for Life, Catholic University, the cross, sort of a central symbol in faith. You may have heard.
Kind of. I think I've heard that.
The administrator, one of the administrators in question, I think the crosses are a message that would evoke more of an emotional cross than is what we're looking for. I'm all for folks sharing different perspectives. I believe in what you're doing. Where we start to do other catchy things to really characterize the message that we're selling, if it creates unnecessary harm, that's where I start to get worried. Huh? What? Yeah. This is the level of argument you get from the other side. Another example, and this is, by the way, why pro-life is winning, is Alabama State Representative John Rogers. There's a Human Life Protection Act legislation that is being debated in the Alabama state legislature. This would ban abortion except when needed to save the life of the mother. The bill passed the state house and moved on to the state senate, but it did so over the objection of State Representative John Rogers, who had this to say about abortion.
All I say to you, it ought to be a woman's choice. I'm not about to be, as a male, tell a woman what to do with her body. She has the right to make that decision herself. To rape and incest. Some kids are unwanted. So you kill them now, kill them later. You bring them in the world unwanted, unloved. Then you send them to the electric chair. So you kill them now, kill them later. But the bottom line is that I think we shouldn't be making this decision.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Kill him now or kill him later. Well, I mean, if that's the choice, Representative Rogers, I guess I'll choose later.
Sure.
We'll give him a shot.
Yeah.
Maybe we won't have to send him to the electric chair.
Maybe. I don't know.
Brother. For more on this topic, we're pleased to be joined by a former abortionist and a board-certified OBGYN. Her name is Dr. Kathi Aultman. She wrote a piece about Unplanned, the movie, for the Washington Examiner, detailing what the movie Unplanned gets right about abortion. And it's another interesting conversion story, very much like the story we heard when former abortionist Tony Levantino was on the show. Very powerful story. Pleased to be joined by Dr. Aultman. Doctor, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Oh, it's great to be here.
And I should hasten to add, too, I mean, you just didn't have a conversion story. You're an activist. You spoke at the 2019 Washington, D.C. March for Life rally, keynote speaker at the 2019 March for Life Rose Dinner. So, leading on this issue as well. Your sort of reactions as a doctor, as a professional in the space, and with your previous practice to the Unplanned movie, the important takeaways from Unplanned.
Well, I guess what it what it illustrates is how blind we can be, how we truly can think we're doing something good when we're doing something very evil, and it really takes some sort of an incident that rips off our blinders so that we can see. And once people can truly see what they're doing, see what they're involved in, then their heart changes and they can't do it anymore. But anytime you take a group of people, like babies, fetuses, and you consider them as non-human, you don't have the same reactions of conscience, and so you feel justified in doing terrible things.
And is that, without spending too much time on it, but I'm sure most listeners aren't fully aware of what for you was that process of the blinders being lifted. Can you tell us about that?
Well, for me, it was a somewhat slow process. I actually did abortions even while I was pregnant. However, when I went back after delivering my baby, I think something happened there that when I went back to the clinic the first time, it upset me. There were three different patients that became very upsetting for me, and I realized that I could no longer do abortion. But it took me several years later. It took seeing young women who got pregnant and had their babies and were doing fine, which didn't jive with my feminist theology. They were doing great, and then I was seeing these women come in who'd had abortions, who were seeing psychiatrists, whose lives were completely messed up. Again, I didn't think that was the case initially. And then finally, a friend gave me an article, and he said, I know that you feel strongly about this issue, but would you please read this? And it was an article that compared abortion to the Holocaust. And the reason it hit home was because my dad was with the first group that liberated the first concentration camp during World War II. So I grew up with these horrible pictures and stories. Never could understand how the German physicians could do what they did in the concentration camps. And when I read that article, it hit me that I was doing the same thing. I didn't consider these fetuses as human. And so I had no qualms about killing them.
When you, I want to go back to something you said, because it's a point that is, I think, sometimes underemphasized by the pro-life movement, and this was something that was inculcated in me by pro-life heroines years and years ago, like Jill Stanek and others, and that is abortion hurts women. And that's conveyed in Unplanned in some different ways, but as a doctor as well, I wanted you to speak to abortion hurting women. You mentioned some having psychological issues afterwards, the pain experience, but if you could just speak to that in more detail.
Well, in addition to the physical problems that can occur, including infertility, and injury to the pelvic organs, there's all the psychological problems. And one of the problems is that abortion activists keep saying abortion is safe. Well, you can say that if your complications aren't reported, and we do not have a decent reporting system in our country. We would have women come into the emergency room. We had one woman whose bowels had been injured, actually pulled down into the vagina by the suction cannula after the doctor perforated. That was never reported. There was no mechanism for reporting these things. And the the face sheets on the chart might say she came in for hemorrhage or she had infection, but it wouldn't say because of an abortion. So you've got the physical things, but the emotional are the I think the things that really damage women's lives. And we have so many women out there who don't talk about it. They don't want to let anyone know. A lot of Christian women who are afraid to say anything because it goes against everything that they believe in. I have to say that becoming a Christian did not change my opinion on abortion, at least not initially. It took that a little while to get me there, but there are an awful lot of Christians who are well-meaning but yet believe in abortion.
Could you? We are in the middle of really unleashing changes in our abortion law in Illinois. We currently have a parental notification with the judicial bypass system. We do have a ban on partial birth abortion. We recently expanded funding to Medicaid and state workers. There is legislation on the move that would eliminate the parental notification, so minors would be able to get an abortion without notifying anyone. It would eliminate the ban on partial birth abortion. It would mandate insurance coverage. It would allow physicians' assistants to perform abortions. Are any of those that I just ticked off, is there one that is particularly offensive or dangerous for Illinois to move down that path, or all?
Well, every one of them, they're all horrendous. I think it's crazy to me that your child cannot go into an emergency room and get care for a true emergency without your permission. I guess if it's life-threatening, they can proceed. But if they cut their hand, other than I guess applying some compression, they can't stitch them or anything without parental consent. And, people are more aware now of human trafficking and that kind of thing, but abortion really helps with human trafficking because these women can be forced to have abortions and everything can be hidden. Same thing with incest. If you can take a child that you've had intercourse with and get them an abortion without their parents ever knowing, then you can keep hiding the secret. So that's, I think, an especially egregious one. We wouldn't subject our children to any other procedure without allowing the parents to know what's going on. The parent ultimately is the one who has that child's best interests at heart.
There's overwhelming opposition to late-term abortions in the nation, even in the states that have passed it. I mean, it's just when you provide the details, nobody's on board for that. The famous Ralph Northam formulation of a baby survives an abortion, well, we'll put it in a bassinet and then we'll have a conversation about what to do with it. And we had, as I mentioned, Dr. Tony Levatino on. He said, as an OBGYN, when he was performing abortions, not once did he ever have to do a late-term abortion to save the life or protect the health of the mother. Not once. In point of fact, that's the worst thing that he would do if a woman was in health crisis in some way because of the amount of time it takes to prep for something like that as compared to dealing with whatever the health emergency is. Is that your experience as well? There was never a need, a requirement from the patient perspective consistent with your Hippocratic Oath to perform a late-term abortion.
Exactly, and I don't know that any of my partners ever had to do that. I think that there are cases where a woman's life can be in danger, and then in that case you have to decide, are you going to lose the mother or lose the baby? But an abortion is not something you would do. You would deliver the woman early. It takes about 2 days to get the cervix properly dilated if it's late term, so that you can't just an abortion is not an emergency procedure. It's not something that you normally do to save a pregnant woman's life.
She is Dr. Kathi Aultman, board-certified OBGYN and fellow of the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. Also a outspoken pro-life advocate now. Again, her piece at WashingtonExaminer.com, a former abortionist on what Unplanned, the movie, gets right about abortion. Dr. Aultman, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you for your efforts.
Thank you.